Fellow Falcoholic Live Patrons, what is up? Welcome to our February belated Falcons Q&A session for our patrons. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with our minor technical difficulties. Once again, apologize for that. But we are here now to answer your questions. So if you guys have anything, please do put it in the chat, or you can tweet it at us or whatever, but chat's probably fastest. If you've got questions, throw those in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can tonight, and we'll just go for a little bit and hang out. Before we do, want to welcome in everyone who has tuned in to help tonight. So first of all, we've got the man himself, Dave Choate. Dave, how are you this evening?
I'm great. I just live in the dream.
Yeah,
at all times.
That blogger, that gratuitous blogger lifestyle that we all know and love.
We were just talking about roundtables, and everybody loves a roundtable.
Everybody wants the behind the scenes of the roundtables. Yeah, it's
they
funny.
Do.
Yeah, because I think when I first got here, I was like, oh, I need to contribute to every roundtable. Like I have to prove myself, and now it's like, yeah, I'll get to that, Dave.
Yeah. Well, It doesn't help that half the time it's a roundtable on how much do you like AJ Terrell? Do you like him a lot?
Do you like him a little?
The off season's tough on everybody.
Right. Do you like him just the right amount? That's the real question. Yes.
The Goldilocks question.
Exactly. Also with us tonight, Adnan Ikic. She's at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I was just mentioning to Dave how bad I am at contributing to those roundtables. And yeah, same mentality, Kevin. At first, you have to prove yourself. You have to really show yourself. Now it's I may get to it. I probably won't. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
If you guys ever wondered how inspiring the leadership is here, then you got this now.
Yes, exactly. So also with us tonight, Director of Guest Personnel, Evan Birchfield, at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Kevin.
I still think that makes him sound too much like he's in a hotel.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
We'll workshop it.
Yeah, well, we're still workshopping it. I think it changes slightly every time I say it. So, we're still workshopping it.
Also, Evan at any moment is working on getting the next big guest, and that's what the AirPod is for in his ear. I'm hearing a rumor that we may get Joe Biden next week.
Yeah, he's working hard on that one. Yeah, haven't heard back yet, but we're hopeful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, guys, like I said, if you've got questions, throw them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can tonight. I know Solaire, a.k.a. Guy Fieri, one of our longtime viewers and patrons, is not going to be able to make it tonight. So his question to start with is if you have a second team, another team other than the Falcons that you like, who is that second team that you root for? So who wants to tackle that one first?
I'll go ahead. Or Dave, you go. No, Dave, you're an expert.
No. I'm not an expert on second teams. You go ahead.
Oh, okay. For me, it's just I mentioned it before, but quick story. I was born in North Carolina. At the time, there wasn't the Carolina Panthers. So my first game, going to an NFL game when I was 6 years old, my dad took me to see the Falcons and Vikings in Atlanta, which was the closest team at the time, because there was no Tennessee Titans either. So we went to that, and, my dad's always been a lifelong Vikings fan. I became a Falcons fan, but I always kind of, as long as they're not playing each other, that sort of stuff, I always kind of hope the Vikings do well. And then obviously, when they went to the Super Bowl the first time in that NFC Championship game, I was way too young to even care what happened. So, that's something he got to experience, but I was 8 years old. So I didn't really care at all, but that would be a team. Also, I've always kind of thought the Chargers were cool, just mainly their uniforms, especially now. I love what they have now. So not that I root for them or anything, but I always thought to myself, they're kind of like the Falcons of the AFC, and that if I didn't become a Falcons fan, that's probably who I would have been a fan of.
Yeah,
I
that makes
I
sense.
absolutely love the idea of Evan's dad taking him to a Falcons Vikings game, to breed this Vikings fandom, and he
Right,
just
right.
becomes a fan of the team they're playing against.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what happens sometimes when you're a
Not that it
parent.
would have been any better. So
Oh yeah, it would have been just as bad.
Yep. Yep. All right. Who wants to take the next crack at that? Who's your second team, folks? If you have
I'll
one.
go.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So similar story for me. My dad, even though he grew up in Massachusetts, like the Patriots were unimaginably bad. They were like Falcons bad, like 60s, early 70s Falcons bad, most of his life, really. So he was not a Patriots fan. I don't know too many Patriots fans who became fans before like the year 2000. So my dad is a Packers fan, and my brother picked that up from him, and I picked the Falcons for some reason. So I don't even like the Packers, so it's tense in that household during NFC Championship games and the like. But during the mid '90s, like I kind of got into the Jaguars for a little bit. Honestly, they were a new team, and I liked their logo and color scheme, and I liked Mark Brunell and Keenan McCardle, Jimmy Smith. Like those were my guys. So I would say that love has faded over the years, especially as they keep dumping dirt cutters on us. But the Jaguars would probably be my second team if I had to pick one. Really, any terrible team that's never won anything, like the Bengals too, that's a kindred spirit team.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Adnan, did you have any other teams that you've cheered for over the years?
No, I I don't have a second team. I've never come close to having a second team. When the Falcons aren't playing, I'm just rooting for my fantasy team. I'm rooting for the guys on my fantasy team to do as well as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I think cheering through fantasy is worthy, certainly. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, there's a couple. So the Titans were actually a team that I grew up as kind of a fan of because I also had family that lived in Tennessee. So that was I did own some. I think I had a McNair jersey at one point that someone had bought for me. So yeah, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Titans. Other teams that I've been a fan of. Recently, I've been kind of absorbed into Bills fandom because I live in upstate New York. So I just can't not be a Bills fan now. People up here get really into the Bills, even all the way over in Syracuse, which is 3 hours away from Buffalo, by the way. There's a lot of Bills Mafia out here, and it's just a fun fan base, and I've just met a lot of really cool Bills fans. So I would say right now my number 2 team is the Bills. Also because I think the Falcons and the Bills are kind of like brothers in suffering. So neither one of us has had much success. We've all suffered through some terrible Super Bowl luck. So I do have a kindred spirit with Bills fans in particular. So
my best friend
too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just saying my best friend growing up was a Bills fan. He was a huge front runner. Again, the Patriots were bad, but he became a Bills fan, and he was a Chicago Bulls fan. So that worked out really well for him for 3 years in the 90s, and ever since it's kind of sucked. So
yeah. I mean, they had that really awesome run in the 90s, and that was way before I was really paying attention to football seriously. But if you don't remember that, folks, they did not win a Super Bowl either after all that success. So very painful Super Bowl memories for the Bills and the Falcons. So I can definitely respect a fan base like that. All right, let's see. So I know we have a question. Go ahead.
I also just came to the realization that I'm the only member of the staff who's younger than the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this offline. Yeah, we're going to talk about this offline.
Yeah, that's for the onboarding call. Yeah.
You have to respect though that our secondary teams all are just as bad as the Falcons or worse. Longevity, none of us are oh yeah, Patriots, or we found teams that they just managed to be just as bad as Falcons.
Yeah, there's a big deep-seated question: are we just attracted to suffering? Is this what we do?
I think that's what I told that.
It could very easily be that at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So
Adnan keeps
I
making
mean-
comments about how young he is, so clearly, yes.
All right.
Da-
Let's
Da-
see.
Dave, you probably remembered when the Panthers were made too. You probably remember the entire lead up to it as well, huh?
I remember when the NFL came about, so autogram. That was a good time.
All right.
Never heard of it. I'm kidding.
I know we have from
Get out of here.
Yeah, from Daryl. Oh, go ahead. If you have more, I know we have a question from Daryl Moore too. So, yeah. All right, I'll just go to the question. So, Daryl Moore, the second, I'm trying to get the gist because he sent me a long explanation for his question, which I appreciate. But so basically, he was basically going through quarterback scenarios in his head. So, he thinks that Lawrence is going to go to Jacksonville. Jets probably going to take Wilson. So we could be in a situation where we're looking at Justin Fields and Trey Lance. So he says if the Falcons decide that Lance is their guy, how do we feel about the potential for Lance basically to be sitting this year and maybe even next year? And then, Lance would basically be going 2 to 3 seasons without starting meaningful games. And does that impact our thoughts on Lance at that point if he's really spending that many seasons away from actually starting meaningful football games? So I guess for me, the answer would be not really, because it's not like he's away from football. I mean, this year he kind of was away from football because NDSU is not really playing, except for that one kind of throwaway game. So if it's 3 seasons where he's not practicing every day and not doing this and that, I think that matters a lot more than if he's basically in the building, playing, in practice, playing probably with the scout team, doing all that sort of stuff in meetings, learning behind Ryan. So to me, that doesn't get me off of Lance. I think if they do take a quarterback like Lance, they're not planning to sit him for more than 1 year. I don't think Matt Ryan's probably going to be here in 2022 if they take a quarterback at 4, but I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. So anyone else have takes on that?
I think also if there's 1 to 2 preseason games where he gets to play, that's a lot. Plus the difference between this regime and the last one is if they had a quarterback, they weren't really interested in getting him time, where if the Falcons suck during the season and they're clearly not making the playoffs, there's no reason to just keep playing Matt Ryan. They want to see what their future is, where Dimitrov didn't really give a shit. It was just kind of well, we'll just keep going with what we're going. Plus, they didn't invest in quarterbacks, so it wasn't like they were going to stick out Matt Schaub anyways. Now, if you got Lance on the bench, you're not making the playoffs, bring him in.
Right. Yeah. Anyone else got Trey Lance takes? I mean, I'm a big fan of Trey Lance, kind of on a tangent, but yeah.
I'm a fan of sitting a quarterback for a year, either way. I mentioned it in the show last night. I think we as fans are a little bit spoiled seeing what Matt Ryan did. He just came in and he set the world on fire immediately in 2008. That didn't really happen pre-Matt Ryan, around the NFL. Teams generally sat their first-round quarterbacks for a year or two. And I think it was Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco who came in and changed that game in 2008. Not that it had never happened before then, but I think after Ryan and Flacco did it, then teams started moving toward, all right, let's throw the quarterback into the fire immediately, and we have to have these expectations of him right away. Matthew Stafford, Sam Bradford coming in the years after that at the top of the draft. But, remember, Aaron Rodgers sat for 2 whole years in Green Bay. Pat Mahomes sat for a whole season in Kansas City. I like the idea of a Lance or a Justin Fields coming in, sitting behind Matt Ryan for a year, learning the ins and outs of the game, of the Arthur Smith offense, getting really, really ingrained in this offense and learning the playbook, going through it in practice, and then, going into their sophomore season, prepared and ready to succeed immediately. Whereas, you throw someone out there in the fire right away, and that could mentally shatter them if they suck and if they're in a very bad position, around them. Just look at Josh Rosen, look at Deshaun Kaiser in Cleveland. Those guys still never really recovered from being thrown into the fire too early. And, I still believe that Rosen could have had a much better career if he would have, been given a fair shot and a fair opportunity in a good situation.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I do think that whether a quarterback succeeds in the NFL or not probably has a lot more to do with the team that they go to versus just their own talent and ability. Like, I think the team matters a lot more than people think. So we think of all these really famous busts and quarterbacks that didn't work out, but it's like, what if they had gone, somewhere else? Like, what if like, Mitchell Trubisky and Patrick Mahomes happened to have their places switched, and Mitchell Trubisky ended up. I'm not saying that, like, that's probably, like, I'm just saying, like, not that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be good in Chicago, but would Mitchell Trubisky have been better in Kansas City?
Yeah.
Like, that's
I think
what
he
I'm
would have
saying.
been better. Yeah, I think he would have been better. But I think that's one of those where it's just such an extreme, like, difference in talent.
It is. Yeah. I was trying to think of two guys, in a class together, but, just saying, like, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be good no matter what because he's amazing. But, like, Trubisky in a much better situation, maybe things could have played out differently. So,
Yeah, and I think I'm going to use kind of an unorthodox example because Adnan stole my Kaiser example. He's a guy that I think with a couple of years to actually sit and learn rather than being completely ruined in Cleveland would have been fine. But I think back to a kicker, actually, of all things. And so way back in like 2007, I'm in a points-only dynasty league where kickers are actually important. And I drafted Justin Medlock, who was at the time, I think, the most accurate kicker in collegiate history. And he missed one field goal in his rookie season in Kansas City, and they cut him.
Yep.
And it took him like 7 or 8 years to climb back in the league with Carolina. And by that point, he was, getting up there and not great. And like, I think about this with quarterbacks too. You throw them in there, somebody like Kaiser or Rosen may never get the shot again because teams have already made up their mind. They're like, he sucked, and it takes a particular kind of team to take a role on somebody like that. And so for all of the quarterbacks outside of Lawrence in this class, like if you're starting them week one, I think you're doing them a disservice. And that's why I think Lance being able to sit and, whether he learns from Matt Ryan or Matt Ryan pulls a Favre and is openly hostile toward him for a year or two, like that has its benefits too. Look at Rodgers, right? He's got that chip on his shoulder. So either way, just give that man, a chance to develop, to learn the offense, and then throw him in a year or two. And I think that'll be great. I think he's got sky high talent. Just don't ruin him in year one by asking, James Carpenter to protect him.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah, and like, for the record, like, I don't see the team passing on Justin Fields for Trey Lance. I'm probably one of the highest people you meet on Trey Lance, and even I wouldn't go, for him above Justin Fields. The discourse on Justin Fields is getting absolutely wild. Like, I think it's just take artists. Like, I don't know how you can watch Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and think Zach Wilson's better, in my opinion. Like, I get people have concerns about Fields, he's too reliant on his first read and all that, but I think if you take it into the proper context that he is being asked to do this at Ohio State, like, I think a lot of people don't understand, like, Ohio State's offense is an option route offense, so he has to stare down the receiver. Like, he's staring down the receiver because the receiver is the one who's deciding where to break their route based on what the defense shows, and he's got to give the receiver extra time to do that. Like, it's not just a timing-based offense like you would see from some of these guys. And physically, Justin Fields and Zach Wilson are on two different planets. Like,
I can definitely see the argument for Wilson over Fields. Like, I'm just like, they're both like right there for me, but the arguments of Mac Jones over Fields, that's just
well, yeah, that one's when we get a little bit wild.
Yeah, that one is just people being stuck inside too long and just like, developing some takes just, to stir the pot a little bit.
What about Kellen Mond above Justin Fields?
Ooh,
Chris Sims, man. Chris Sims is a real. Yeah. I don't know. I know this is a small audience, but I don't want to say how I really feel. Nonetheless, I don't care for Chris Sims. I think his evaluations are not good, which happens to all of us. But I think he's openly dishonest about them too. Like, he's changing them. He's just trying to stir it up. Like, nobody thinks Kellen Mond is better than Trey Lance and Justin Fields. Nobody actually thinks that.
I thought I liked Kellen Mond until I saw that take. Like, I was like, oh my god. Okay, well.
All right, now we've shifted to the point where we're now roasting our enemies in this live chat. So let's begin. No, I'm just
Okay.
kidding.
Yeah. Tyler Russell says, we can just keep it private if you want to go off, Dave. So we don't have to make it public.
Yeah, no, I mean, he wouldn't care anyways. He'd be like counting his money and he'd be like, oh, some bald guy doesn't like me?
Yeah.
Shit, that's too bad.
I'm sure he doesn't even know who we are. So
Yeah, he and that waiter.
Man,
Good times.
that hurts.
Yeah.
He was talking about that's a whole different story.
That's a story for another day. Yeah. That's the after hours.
I'm holding that one close. Yeah, all these years later.
Yeah, but
that's for the super Patreon show. Dave does that one with his shirt off too.
Yeah, that's for when we add the $100 Dave Meat tier. Yeah. So.
Oh man, what's happening here?
Yeah, we're getting off the rails. I know we have a bunch of questions, so I want to make sure we get to them. But yeah, so yeah, that's. I'm sure we'll get other quarterback questions, so we can keep it for that. But speaking of Tyler Russell, we got another question from him. So he says, I haven't watched a ton of Tennessee Titans film. Does Arthur Smith throw to the running back frequently like Kyle Shanahan did? The answer is not so much. I mean, they did throw quite a bit in 2019 to Dion Lewis. I think he had 25 receptions. He wasn't good. Dion Lewis in 2019. So that's part of it. I think he averaged 6 yards of reception, which is awful. But, they did throw to him a little bit more. Derrick Henry is a fine receiver, but his ability as a runner just makes it so he's kind of an afterthought in the passing game. So over the past 2 seasons, they haven't really targeted the running back that much, but it probably depends on the talent more than anything. They didn't necessarily have this tremendous talent in terms of a receiving back. They had multiple tight ends. They got A.J. Brown and Corey Davis. The running back just wasn't a featured part of the passing game. But it doesn't mean it won't be like that here if he were to have a better running back. But, yeah, what do you guys think about that? Would you like to see him use the running back in the passing game more necessarily?
Not really. I want to see, depends on who they get, right? I'd like to see Ito get some targets just because he's fun anyways with the ball in his hand. He just makes things happen. And I'd like to see him get more touches after Dirk Cutter tried to bench him all year. And Raheem Morris was like, no, he's the starter now. And Dirk Cutter was like, but is he? He was still trying to give Todd Gurley carries at the end of the year. I don't understand that. But it was weird. But I think, running back targets, unless you're really scheming brilliantly, are, they're kind of a wasted opportunity, right? Because everybody else is downfield already.
Yeah.
So I want fewer passes to the flat.
Yeah, I think it was, I think it might have been our analytics guy. I'm blanking on his name. Ben Baldwin. I think he had a funny quote on Twitter. He was like, passes to the running back are better than running, but they're not better than passing to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And so especially with you got Julio, you got Ridley, you got Gage, you got Hurst, you'll probably add another tight end. Even Lamade, is a guy that I'd like to see more of. So it's no, you don't need to overdo it there unless you get a guy that's gives you a really compelling reason to start ramping those up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they may go after someone who's more versatile there because the threat of the running back catching passes is still important, and the ability for them to, flex out wide and that sort of thing, I think can open up stuff for your offense. But funneling 50 targets a la Falcons in 2019 with Devontae Freeman, just 50 catches for Freeman, not necessary. So I would say, they don't necessarily need to do that. So, all right, let's see. Next question we got from Daryl Moore. So he says, I'm thinking about trading back, knowing that we've only got 39 players under contract, and we need to go BPA regardless of position. We need playmakers on both sides of the ball. What do you guys think about the Falcons trading back? I assume he means at the top, but maybe at any point. But yeah, what are you guys' thoughts right now on trading back in this class?
I'm never against trading back, but this year I'm against trading back. Just because we're in that prime position to take that quarterback. And if a quarterback wasn't in play right now, I'd be all for trading back. getting some extra picks, plugging up some of these holes that we have, because this team has a lot of holes still. But you have the opportunity to take your quarterback potentially for the next decade. You are in a 4 quarterback class, and you have one of those top 4 picks to guarantee yourself one of those top 4 quarterbacks. I just don't think that these opportunities come along often enough for us to be trading back and to just not waste the opportunity. It wouldn't be a waste to trade back, but to let go of that opportunity. So I'm for sticking at 4 and taking a quarterback. At the beginning of the offseason, I'm like, hey, yeah, I'll like, I'm down to trade back as well. But now the more time passes, the more I realize that quarterback needs to be the move.
Yeah. Anyone else got trade down thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go pro trade down. I think this is a prime opportunity to get your quarterback, so I completely understand not wanting to move down. But I look at this team's current cap situation. I look at their entire roster situation, and like, do I think that Matt Ryan can play at a pretty high level for the next 3 years? And maybe you get somebody a little bit later, like Kellen Mond, to develop. Sure, I think that, and I think if you can pick up a war chest of picks in exchange for number 4, it's something you have to look at. Getting this team back to relevance in the short term depends not just on the quarterback of the future, which is important for the long haul, but really just renovating this defense entirely and adding more talent on offense. Like, there's just so many holes on this roster, or things that will be a hole in a year's time. So, if somebody blows Terry Fontenot away with an offer, yeah, I'm in favor of it. I'd be happy with it. And if they skip down a few spots and do what we did in our insane mock draft that did not resemble reality in any way.
What are you talking about? That's the most accurate mock draft I've ever seen. Okay.
Well, if it is, then great. You got to trade down to 9 and do that.
And then trade down again. Yeah.
And then trade down again. Like, yeah. I mean, if they move way down though, and they do end up getting somebody who free falls, like if teams overthink Fields, which I don't think they will, or Lance falls, or even you're in the middle of the first round and suddenly Mac Jones looks appealing, then great. Maybe you can split the difference and pick up some extra picks. But yeah, I'll be fine. The only thing that I will not be fine with is them moving up. And I understand the argument for doing it if like you got to have your quarterback, but this team is not in a position to be bleeding picks if they really are serious about contending this year and next year.
Yeah, and it's like I'll definitely talk about the trade down, but like on that note, like the Falcons, the only trade up I could see is like a swap with Miami, basically. If the Falcons, like, say Justin Fields is left and the team knows Justin Fields is their guy, like they want Justin Fields, a swap with Miami of 1 pick shouldn't theoretically cost the Falcons much. But why would Miami take that deal? Like, why wouldn't, if Miami's getting offers for this pick, that the Falcons feel like they need to trade up with Miami? The only thing I could think is that Miami wanted Sewell or Jamar Chase for sure. And if they wanted one of those guys, they could pick up maybe a 3rd rounder or something like that from Atlanta, which I would hate to give up. But like the Falcons aren't going to be trading like enormous picks to swap with Miami. Like this isn't like a Bears 49ers situation. Like we're not going to be trading multiple day 2 picks to go one spot. But that's the only thing that I could see. The Falcons said, we want Justin Fields. Miami, we'll give you our 3rd. You still will be guaranteed to get your choice of Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell here at 4. And we'll make a small swap. I wouldn't love it, but it would be understandable if they thought like Justin Fields is our guy for the future, and we're not going to risk him going at 3. So that's the only thing I could get on that one. But I still think a trade down is the second best option, other than just taking the quarterback you want at 4, because I think if like say it's Lance left at 4. If you don't want Lance, I think someone does, and I think you could get at least day 2 picks in a trade down. And this is the class where the day 2 range is where you're going to be adding a lot of talent. Like the first round isn't stacked, but the fall off from like pick 15 to pick 60 is very little. Like those are very valuable picks. You can get really quality players all throughout that range. So I would be down with picking up, a second and a third or something in a trade down. Like, obviously a future first would be awesome, but if that's not on the table, just getting a couple extra day 2 picks could be the difference in getting, 2 day 2 starters or like 4 day 2 starters. So, and I think if you go to like 7 or 9 or something like that, you still have a chance potentially for a quarterback if you want one. But if not, probably Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain will be there. Maybe Kyle Pitts, maybe a wide receiver if they're really serious about that. Elijah Vera Tucker, I think, is like, or Rashawn Slater, probably the worst case scenario. You could get one of those guys to solidify your O-line after you've picked up additional resources. I think that could work out well for you too. So, but yeah, I'm fine with it. I would be cool if they're actually considering trading down, but it also doesn't have to be in round 1. Like, they could have offers to trade down later in the draft to pick up, not as many resources, but some, and that's also a possibility. Another possibility that we haven't touched on is they're probably going to be looking to trade up later. And I say that because they're going to have 3 5th-round picks. Nobody wants to make 3 5th-round picks. Like, let's just be honest. Like, nobody really wants to make like 5 late day 3 picks. Like, sure, you can get some guys there, but I think the team is much more likely to package those 5ths or package of, 2 5ths and a 6 to get an extra day, like extra round 4 pick, or maybe even go back into round 3 from round 4 to get a choice player rather than taking, 3 swings in the 5th round at guys that, that honestly, like under Dimitrov, they were like decent at getting contributors in that spot, but I'd probably rather use like many of those picks to get another day 2 selection. That's just my opinion, but don't be shocked if we're looking at that happening at some point in the draft. All right, so another one from Tyler Russell. He's asking, he keeps seeing reports where we're linked to running backs high in the draft. He's hoping that we don't spend that high draft pick. I'm guessing he's talking about Najee Harris at 4, which very much not on that train as you are, Tyler Russell. But he's saying he's hoping we don't spend that high of a draft pick on the position. What are our thoughts on that? And I guess maybe he's asking also, like, where would we like to add a running back? So I'll let you, I've been talking for a minute, so I'll let you guys take a swing at that one. Yeah.
If we're going to go running back, I would want to do it earliest 3rd round. I wouldn't want to spend any 2nd rounders on running back either, just because the position is so, like, it's so easier to get, and the opportunity cost is so much bigger compared to the other positions. Like, this team needs a couple safeties. This team needs a pass rusher. This team, maybe another linebacker wouldn't hurt. Like another cornerback. I think a guard. All of these, for me, are higher priority than a running back. And I'd be completely fine if we don't even draft a running back entirely. Like, if we come out of the offseason getting a Marlon Mack on the cheap, or a Mike Davis, like, as a cheap stopgap for a year, I think we could definitely make the run game work, and I would be willing to do that if it means that we can plug up these holes through the defense, because like I said, I want a quarterback, and that'll take away the 1st round pick. So everything else, in my opinion, almost everything else needs to be defense regarding those like really premium picks.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess I'm pretty high on this running back class. Not necessarily, like, I think the top is obviously good with like Harris and Etienne. I would certainly consider Javonte Williams with our 2nd round pick. Usually when I get to that spot, there's a defensive player that I'm more tempted to take. I think in our mock we did Asante Samuel Jr. I've seen Jalen Phillips there, the edge rusher from Miami. I'd rather have him probably than a running back. So like, there's a lot of scenarios where like Javonte Williams would be awesome there, and I think he would be just a really fun addition to this team. But I don't think you have to do that. Like, I think you can get one of these other guys like Michael Carter from North Carolina, like same, school as Javonte Williams, was actually the starter up until this last year. They split carries, but like Javonte Williams overtook Carter this last year, but Carter's still very good. Memphis, Kenneth Gainwell. I love Gainwell. Almost like a slot slash running back hybrid. So like Tyler, if you're looking for like a pass catcher, Gainwell runs routes from the slot. Like he's almost a slot receiver. And he's smaller, so he's not a guy that you necessarily want taking like 200 plus carries. But with Ito Smith, I think, he provides a really dynamic presence there. There's a lot of guys like, I think like Adnan was saying, third round, Trey Sermon, Chuba Hubbard, Ramondre Stevenson, later even you could get those guys. Jamar Jefferson from Oregon State too, like a guy you could probably get 4th round, 5th round, and he can be a starter. Like these are all like that. This happens every year. There's always these like late day 2, early day 3 running backs that just come in and start and play really well. Like you don't necessarily have to get the premium talent at the position because of how it's valued. And, I don't blame Adnan for not wanting to use the second on a running back when there's all these other players that are available later. So yeah, I mean, I'm open to Javonte Williams in the second. I'm absolutely not interested in spending a 1st round pick on a running back, period. Like, I don't care if we trade down to 15, I'm still not taking Najee Harris there. I know that's sacrilegious to some people, but I just don't like Najee Harris like that. Like, I think he's a good running back, probably the best running back in this class, but to me, like, the difference between Najee Harris and Javonte Williams is not worth a 1st round pick. That's where I am on that. But what do you guys think about running back at this point?
I think the only way you're going to see Harris on the Falcons is if they did some crazy trade where they moved back to like 24 where Pittsburgh is, and collected crap load of picks. But in that spot, that's about where I would take Harris. I wouldn't take him at 4. I think that's insanely too early. Pretty much anything ahead of that is too early, but yeah. But I do prefer the option you mentioned, just taking somebody in like the 2nd or 3rd round, maybe even beyond that. I think Ito Smith's still good if there's, I think we forget that like Dirk Cutter just sucks at the run game. His whole there's like a history of it. Like he hasn't been good anywhere, so it's kind of unfair to judge. Like Ollison too, who's quietly still like in the wings, like maybe he'll be pretty good. He's like that bigger kind of running back that Arthur Smith's offense like thrived on the last couple of years. So, I don't think they don't necessarily need to take one super high. I think they'll eventually like in the mid rounds look at it just because why not? Plus Gurley's expected to be gone, so they can kind of take that risk. But you still have Ito Smith. He's not terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that is, I think people, and it's understandable, like with Arthur Smith, the only thing we really have to go on for him is that he was the offensive coordinator in Tennessee, and Derrick Henry was great for him, but you do not need to get, the next Derrick Henry
right
for him to be successful. If you do, that's a big problem, because that means your scheme is not up to snuff and you're just riding, a guy who is ridiculous into the ground, and that's how you have to have success on the ground. So I think they can wait. I'm not saying you can just plug and play anybody back there. I don't think it quite works like that. But if, you find a guy, who's talented in the 3rd or the 4th round, which the Falcons have done in the recent past, then I think that's good enough. I'd prefer to hit other positions early.
Yeah. And like, I think that is a really good point that you guys brought up, which is that we don't really know Ito Smith or Quadrillison's talent because there's no way you could have seen what they were capable of doing under Dirk Cutter. Like, he's the run back killer. Like, he just destroys any semblance of a successful rushing attack. And it's just really unfortunate that we've had to deal with that. But like, I mean, it's entirely possible that Arthur Smith's like, okay, Ito Smith and Quadrillison, I'm fine with those two. Let's just add someone late to compete, like a Jamar Jefferson. We'll just add in another guy that we like, and then we'll go from there. I think we all assume that the Falcons have like nothing at running back because of what Dirk Cutter did. But remember, Dirk Cutter also had Devontae Freeman and did not even play the man. Like, he had Devontae Freeman on the roster, didn't use him, and then the very next season, Shanahan comes in and makes him like 1,000-yard rusher. Like, this type of thing could happen. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily bank on it, but like, just the fact that it's not Dirk Cutter means that the running game is going to get better. How much better, open to interpretation. But that's where I think we are with that right now. So we've got another question from Rakondo King. I think he's our newest patron, so thank you, Rakondo, for your patronage. We appreciate you, man. So he asks, will the Falcons restructure anyone else before the start of the new league year? Yes, definitely. 100%. They have to. They have to get positive in cap before the new league year starts or bad things happen. So they absolutely will do that. Everyone's obviously talking about like Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, but there are some other options as well. Like Grady Jarrett, Jake Matthews, Deion Jones are all guys that I've floated on various episodes on here. So I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Do you think it's going to be a Ryan or Jones restructure? Do you think it's going to be one of those other guys? Do you think it's going to be multiple? What are your guys' thoughts on the restructures that we're going to see?
I think if they don't restructure Ryan, then the tea leaves will be screaming that we're going quarterback at number 4.
It's obvious.
Like it won't be subtle at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll have a minor restructure of Ryan either way. Not anything like, not the max restructure, which will like guarantee the last like few years of his contract or more or less. I don't think that restructuring Julio is the way to go just because his contract is already kind of hamstringing you and you're definitely not getting out of it anytime soon already. I think Grady Jarrett is a prime candidate for a possible max restructure. I don't know how far they can go with Jake Matthews because I remember they restructured him last year, but he's another guy who's going to stick around for a while. So just always remember with the restructures, if it's someone who's like really good in his prime, whom you can see sticking around for the entirety of his contract, it behooves you to restructure him as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I would be kind of shocked if they don't do anything with Ryan, but I agree that they're probably not going to do this massive restructure because that would really make it really bad. Like his cap hit's already over 40 million next year. If you do this maximum restructure, it's going to be like 48, something like that. 49 million next year. I mean, it's going to get ridiculous. So, the cap is probably going to explode next year. So you're like, oh, well, if the cap's 220 million next year, maybe it doesn't matter if he's getting paid an extra 8 million. But I'm sure they would like to sign other players too. So that's important. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, they got a plan just in case we get like COVID-20 and we got to do this whole thing over again. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. But yeah, did you have any thoughts on who they might restructure, Dave?
No, I think the one that I'd like to see is, if you can get it done with Matthews, do that. If you can get it done with Jarrett and really free up as much space as you can with those two. I know people clamor to replace Jake Matthews on a regular basis because left tackles and cornerbacks are two positions that Falcons fans just hate anybody that plays there with a passion. But
Sam Baker.
Well, I get it sometimes, but nonetheless. Like Matthews is a guy, he's aging pretty gracefully. He's not that old to begin with. So, if you want to keep him around a little longer, great. Jarrett is as good as it gets. So you want to try to keep him around as long as possible. So go after those guys first and kind of see where you get. Maybe they will feel forced to touch Ryan and Julio's contracts, which gives them a little bit less flexibility next year. But I hope that they can get by with doing minimal restructures on those two, if any.
Yeah. And I know there was a question that came in on Twitter. I can't find it. It was like earlier about like how much the Falcons could like possibly clear if they did like max restructures to Ryan and Julio and Grady and Jake and Deion. So I crunched some numbers. Let me pull that up real quick. If they do like max restructures to all those guys I just mentioned, they do a post June 1st cut of Fowler. They do a post June 1st cut of Carpenter. They cut Tyler Davison and Isaiah Oliver as well. They could be at 42.5 million. And I think that is the absolute max that you're probably looking at having. And that's like a sizable amount of cap space, but at that point, the team will be at like 34 people under contract. And, you're obviously down like a ton of players. Like you're going to need to make a ton of moves. So, and then Matt Ryan and Julio Jones not going anywhere. for the rest of their contracts because they're going to be loaded up with this bonus money. So that particular extreme example probably not going to happen. But like if they were not to touch Ryan or Julio at all and make all those other moves I listed, they would be at 18.4 million in space, which is workable, certainly. They probably need 7 or 8 million for the draft class, maybe less, depending on everything that happens. But, if they have 10 million and they need to sign like 5 veterans, they could do it. Like they had 10 million, that's enough to sign, 5 guys. And we haven't talked about it a lot. We've talked more about like, oh, what are teams going to do to get under? But like, there's going to be just an enormous number of these mid-level veterans that are just out there. And it sucks for them. And I really dislike it. And I'm sure that's why there's all these deliberations going on about trying to keep the cap as flat as possible. Because if the cap does drop to like 185, which is the current projection, there's going to be a ton of mid-level veterans and they're going to get lowballed like crazy. Like a ton of these guys are going to be forced to sign for basically peanuts because teams don't have the money to pay them and they're not going to be willing to commit to them long term. So there's just all these guys that are going to be forced to take these low contracts. And like, yes, maybe that helps the Falcons sign some of these guys when they might not have otherwise been able to, but like, it's not good for the NFL long term. So it's kind of wild with the situation we're looking at. But yes, the Falcons are going to be able to get under the cap. They're not going to have any trouble with that. It really just depends how much they want to spend in free agency. And that's going to determine the rest of what they do. And if they get really aggressive, over 40 million, go crazy, sign Joe Tooney and Carl Lawson, whoever the hell else you want. Or they could take the more conservative, route, clear maybe 18.5, 19 million, sign the draft class and a few low end, mid-tier guys and just try to let it ride this year and then go into 2022 with an open pocketbook, maybe able to move on from Ryan or Julio, trade them for major assets. And you're looking at maybe going into that year with like 80 million plus in space and a bunch of draft picks and just kind of rebooting. So it just depends on the strategy they want to take. We don't know, obviously, what their strategy is.
Or we can go the Saints route and just kick the can down the road as far as possible. And, maybe we'll all be dead by the time
by the time the cap comes due. Yeah. It'll be nuclear annihilation by the time we got to pay that bill. So, yeah.
That's the way. I mean, I'm convinced that Mickey Loomis is like an immortal vampire. And like, so he's planning on outliving everybody.
Yeah.
Including the salary cap. Like, he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
I respect it.
On the other hand, maybe he's legitimately just trying to kick it so far down the road until he retires and is like, all right, this is your problem to the next guy.
Yeah. I mean, you got to respect that in a way, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it makes for fun off seasons every year where Saints fans get to feel smart because their team, gets out from under their cap hell and then loses in the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, I remember there's a few years ago, I was really into listening to like sports radio here in Atlanta. And there was this one radio host who his entire argument was, oh, I'm a fan. I don't care about like what happens 3, 4, 5 years from now. I want to go all in and I want to win now. Like, bro, thank God you're not the general manager then, because
Right.
that is the worst possible mentality you can have.
Mm-hmm. It is. You have to be thinking multiple years down the line when you sign these contracts. Like, you have to be building it for flexibility every single year, or else you're just going to hit a wall at some point. And like, kudos to the Saints. Like, they've been able to find ways to just like wiggle out of it with how they've structured all these contracts. And like, they're cutting, they've already started to just cut all these contributors, and like, they're going to be able to get under, but like, what's the team going to look like? I guess we'll see. So.
Yeah, and those same win now people are the same ones calling for everyone's head like a few years from now when the team sucks because they went all in to win.
We're in
now.
cap hell. Yeah. All right. So we got time for probably one more in-depth question. And conveniently, Darrell Moore and Rakondo King both sent in a question that was about the same thing. So we can technically answer both your questions at once. So there you go, 2 for 1.
We are very efficient here at the Falcoholic.
We are. We like to be efficient when we can. Yes. So
we are supermarket deal-esque.
Yes. So from Moore and King, they're basically asking, what are we going to do in the secondary this offseason? Is corner or safety more important to address at this point? So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I would we need both.
We need both, yes.
We definitely need both.
You
Like,
only get to pick one. No,
if we only get to pick one, then I'd say safety is a little more important, just because we have nothing at safety.
Jalen Hawkins,
Like,
baby.
yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Hawkins. I am on the Hawkins hype train, and I can't wait to see what he does this next season. But even so, it's like it's Jalen Hawkins, and then maybe we bring back Sherrod Neesmith to never play him,
Right. Always,
as is
yeah.
customary the past few years.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need safeties, man. Like, at least cornerback, you have Terrell, you have Oliver was okay when he wasn't tasked with being like a starter. Oliver was okay in matchups. We definitely need another CB2. We got Bleedy Ray Wilson, who was conveniently maybe the second best cornerback on this team last year.
Right. Free Bleedy.
Free Bleedy, yeah. He's just just a metronome of consistency.
Yeah.
But yeah, safety, we need. It's not even like a question about safety. You have to go address it. You need multiple safeties. You have to address this position one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, I agree completely with that. Like, I think cornerback in some ways is the more pressing need because everything after Terrell is so shaky on paper. But, safety, you have nothing. So if you don't rebuild the position this offseason, you're going to get roasted. And they might get roasted anyways, but you got to try.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it is a really tough question. And like, honestly, like safety might be like the deepest position in this class. Like there are a lot of really, really nice safeties out there. Let me pull up my top 10. I think they're all like, my top 10 is all like guys that I would consider drafting like early. Like, yeah, like Trayvon Moehrig obviously is the big name, the guy that might go late first round. I mean, if he's there in the second, that would be awesome. But if he's gone, you've got Richie Grant, you've got Javon Holland, Hamson Nasiruddin, Andre Sisco, LeCount from Georgia, Paris Ford. You've got guys later like Talanoa Hufanga, who could be like the next kind of Keanu Reed type player, like super physical. James Wiggins, Ardarius Washington, Reed Blake. Like there's a ton of guys. Like I could just go on. Like, and a lot of those names I said at the end, like you could get on day 3. So like they might take 2 safeties in the draft. They could also go out and sign a safety for one of the starting positions, like Marcus Williams, a free agent. Saints probably can't afford to bring him back. So, that is a possibility that's been floated. So you get Marcus Williams to play center field, and then you go out and add, Javon Holland as your strong, or Hamson or Cyrildine in the 3rd round to be your strong safety, and you're pretty much set. And then at corner, it's another position where there is some talent in that like late first round, early second round range, guys that you'd like to add. It just drops off a lot faster at corner. So like if they're not able to get one in the first or second round, it's just like, are they really going to have an impact starter at that point? So they might be wanting to sign a corner more than a safety, but I guess we'll see. But I don't know if anybody else has opinion on that.
We could always get super frisky and just play with no secondary next year.
All linebackers. It's the strength of the team. Just go with it. Yeah, just go with it.
Yeah. Just all out blitz every time. Just like me as a kid in Madden, engage 8 every single play, except this will be engage 11.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird, man. Yeah, but I do like the safety class in the draft, so I wouldn't be upset at all if they ended up adding 2 safeties from that group just to get really spicy. All right, let's see. Well, George Costanza came in late, so I wanted to at least answer one question from him before we get out of here. So George is asking about his running back crush, Larry Roundtree, in the 4th round. And like George, honestly, I haven't watched Roundtree. But I know I read, after you mentioned him, I did read his scouting report on Draft Network, and like, based on what Dave said, he is like a day 3 guy for them. So it could be a possibility as like a depth guy. I know you really like him, so like I don't want to really necessarily comment on his skill set because I haven't really watched him, but
I will say I like where George's head is at with a nice day 3 running back and not a 2nd round running back. So I'm endorsing George's mindset for sure when it comes to this topic.
Yeah. I will say that I actually once had a defensive end named Larry Roundtree in Madden, and he was a pretty good player. So
okay. Well,
that's
that
the
checks
kind of
out.
analysis you need.
That
Yeah.
checks out. Yeah.
That actually changes everything.
Yeah, I thought so. So
now I know.
this is
That
why
makes
I'm
it a
here.
day
you know.
two.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and we did have one more comment from George, just a comment. He's saying, remember that Jeffrey Okudah was considered the best defensive back in the draft last year, and he was completely lost in Detroit. Drafting a defensive back in the top 5 can be very hit or miss. Pitts is a guaranteed hit. Yeah, George is like the world's biggest Kyle Pitts fan, and I respect it. Like, this man comes on every Wednesday and stands Kyle Pitts. So, like, brother, like, you know, I'm glad you're very consistent. Like, George is not, he does not back down from his Pitts hype. So yeah, and honestly, like, now that, you know, we've talked about it a bit, like, Pitts is not that outlandish of a pick for the Falcons in the first round. You know, obviously we'll see what they do, but it's definitely something to monitor, particularly if they do end up signing like an offensive line starter in free agency or something like that. Because, like, if Sewell is not going to be the pick and quarterback is not going to be the pick and they stay at 4, it's like, well, is it Jamar Chase or is it like Kyle Pitts or is it like a defensive player? There's just not a lot of options. So it could very well turn into Kyle Pitts by default at that point. So, all right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. It is basically an hour, so I appreciate all our guests for coming on another night this week. And we appreciate all of the patrons for their support and for coming on and just hanging out with us. We have a lot of fun with these guys, and we appreciate all you for coming and chatting. Like I said, for those of you that are watching this later on YouTube, you can easily join in with this. We do these once a month. We will have another one in March, probably after all the free agency frenzy stuff goes down, so we can talk more about those types of things. But yeah, just check out the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. We got a lot of stuff that goes on there. Early access to the podcast audio for these episodes and things like that as well. Discord privileges, all that fun stuff. So definitely check that out. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff as well. And again, patrons, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys very much for your support. Before we get out of here, I want to thank my guests. First of all, the man himself, Dave Cho at the Falcoholic. Dave, anything that you want to plug tonight before we sign off?
Just stick with us. We'll have a lot of interesting stuff for free agency and the draft. And, you know, especially during free agency, we're all frantically trying to catch up with everything as it happens. And it's a lot of fun for us. So we hope you enjoy it too.
Yes.
Absolutely. Adnan has volunteered with his comments to do all of it. So.
Yes. Okay,
I've done
thanks,
what?
Adnan. Yeah.
Oh, Dave, I quit.
Nope, sorry.
That
Can't hear
contract's
you.
in blood.
Breaking up.
That contract's written in
Yeah.
blood. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Not going to be that easy. Yeah. We have
Yeah,
to talk with got to talk with Hirsch, right? He figured out the ritual to escape.
I told you that only works once.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah. We're going to have to tweak it.
Once every 1,000 years, I'm kind of out of luck within that window.
That's true.
well, you're young. You got time.
Yeah.
So.
Got time. But yeah, speaking of Adnan, he is at Say Which Way on Twitter. Adnan, anything that you would like to plug tonight?
Yes, doing a lot of very, very important work with the Falcoholic. A lot of effort is being put in, and yeah, we're very, very busy. Everyone's very busy now that
especially right
Dave.
now.
Yes,
yeah, especially right now. Yeah, in the off
So
season.
busy
At all
we
times.
can't remember anything.
So busy that we have to go. Yeah. No, but Adnan is working on this. God, I'm blanking out on what it's called now. But
the March
Madness
type
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's kind of gotten away from me for a bit. I wanted to start it a bit earlier, but we had some technical difficulties on our platform, so I had to send it up to the higher ups at SB Nation to help out with some of the technical stuff for that.
Yeah, we have to escalate it up the chain of command. Now we're lost in the labyrinth of help
a
desk.
lot of bureaucracy. A lot of red
tape. Yeah, that's okay.
Red tape.
Yep, exactly. Red and black
Yeah,
tape at the Falcoholic.
We'll actually I'll actually debut probably next year, to be honest. By the time.
2020 best moments of 2021 now coming in 2022. But yeah, thank you for that though. It does look cool. It is gonna be fun when it comes out. We promise. So keep an eye out for that one, folks. And then also with us, our director of talent management guest person, Evan Birchfield, at Evan Birchfield on Twitter. Evan, anything that you are working on that you'd like to plug?
I love how the title just keeps changing.
It does. It's fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, guest person. So I've been doing kind of like a little series on first round picks at specific positions and how recent history, how they fared. So I did quarterback and offensive line so far, which is on the Falcoholic.com. And because of George Costanza being a patron, I'm doing tight ends next to do Kyle Pitts, just for him. So George, when you see that article, know that it's because of you. Because I was going to do receivers, but I'm going to do tight ends first.
Yeah, George was so insistent about tight end that we can't ignore tight end anymore. So
exactly.
Yeah.
But and don't miss next Thursday's show. We got good guests on.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Sorry, folks. Wednesday show.
Yes,
not
Wednesday, not Thursday. This is for this. Okay, this is a special occasion. Yeah.
Look, nobody knows what day it is
I
anymore.
certainly don't. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I was out literally all day yesterday skiing, and then I just showed up at the house at like 7:50, and then put on the stream, and then went to sleep. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not even Thursday yet. But yeah, guys, I'm Kevin Knight, by the way, at Falcoholic Kevin. Today I did a quick article about Desmond Trufant possibly returning to the Falcons. I'm sure you hated it or loved it, depending on your thoughts on Desmond Trufant. So go check that out. I'll have a new video, I think, for Monday covering cornerback. So check that out as well. Cornerback free agents for the Falcons, in case that wasn't clear. And yeah, guys, we'll just have other stuff coming. If you're looking for more podcast audio stuff, I'm going to be converting all of the previous free agency videos into podcasts at your request. We've had a lot of people ask for that, so I'll be doing that. Those will be coming out over the next couple weeks as well on our podcast feeds. But again, guys, we just really appreciate your support. It's been really great to have you guys here. The off season's a lot less lonely with all you guys hanging out and chatting with us. So thank you for your support. Thank you everyone else for watching. And we will see you guys next week for Wednesday's show. Until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and week, and we will talk to you soon, guys. Have a great night.